First of all, even before beginning, I would like to say that I have in mind that this year should be memory of my father, Lei Ben Svi Hirsch, but also of my maternal grandfather. I'll explain why in another couple minutes. His name was Tanchum Wolf Ben Yitzchak. I have them both in mind. I want to extend thanks to the Ribono Shalom. The shul, with a little pressure maybe, invited me to speak tonight. I'm really very honored. And what can I say? And I think I skipped. I meant to say first, or I said thanks to Kodesh Baruch Hu also, I think I said. I want to thank to my mother also, who is responsible for the fact that if you talk, you're going to be recorded. I just want to warn you. And it better be nice to me, because my mother's going to hear this, okay? So, but that's okay. She's used to me fighting with my brothers over the years. She could probably handle this as well. And I also would like, of course, to thank the B'nai Bias, who on their birthday gave up some time, didn't realize when we made the date. And also the mispalim from the shul who all came, and the friends who are here, and the acquaintances. I'm very honored. And also soon to come, I'm sure, my team members who work with me. They both told me they're coming. I want to mention them, my son, Rabbi Nachum Albin, and Rabbi Baruch Tuman. I mentioned my grandfather. I just want to say, I remember many years ago when we were sitting Shiva for him, and my uncle, my mother's brother, asked me, "Where are you from? Like, what happened?" And I said, "Well, I think it was your father's Sedarim that did the trick." So he looked at me in shock. He said, "I went to the same Sedarim. It didn't work for me." I said, "I'm still who I am. What was the difference?" But I really didn't have a good answer for him anymore. But I was thinking, 32 years davening and learning in a Hasidic makom, I think I actually have the answer. I want to share it all with you. I suppose it's a moment I should relish, although maybe it was a bit foolish at the same time. I don't know if it was 1981 or 1982, but I decided to drive back from where I was going to school in Maine. That's a cold state, if you don't know. And decided to drive back for the Pesach Seder. Didn't want to miss it. I'd never missed my grandfather's Seder, and I wanted to be there. I woke up in the morning. This was the day when you couldn't rely on the weather. I didn't even think to look. And there was 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground, and it was still coming down like a blizzard. And I didn't even have a Havamina. I got in the car to go by myself back to the Seder from Maine all the way to New York. About half an hour into the drive, when I was on the highway, and I expected at least that the highway would be plowed, the highway was not plowed. And I realized at this point, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was a dangerous situation, but we, pun intended, plowed through, made the Seder, Baruch Hashem, and I realized now that the hachanas for a mitzvah are sometimes greater than the mitzvah themselves. And from that schus, I think my grandfather's Seders had a different effect on me, because I don't believe my uncle ever risked his life to go to the Seder. And so here I am to be able to hopefully share with you an insight that I had. Many of you heard from me, some of the young men from TELS in particular, who are here joining us today, who we sometimes have the pleasure of learning in the same room with. The fact that there's what I titled the whole program is really can be said in the first minute or two. It's the support for it that's the problem, and that is that you want to make everyone pay attention as much as possible. And one year I hopped, that there doesn't seem to be an answer to why we dip twice. That's a regular, normal answer. The Gemara says it's done for hekera, which some people understand in the halachics form is to make the children ask. But the Haggadah certainly doesn't say that. And I'm not taking away from that point. I mean, that's 100% true. I don't mean to be knocking that in the slightest. But it doesn't seem to be the Haggadah's answer. And despite the fact also that as far as answers goes, it's somewhat circular. You're asking a question in order to get people to ask questions. What kind of answer is that? It's almost like what people say I'm going to do tonight is make a trick. Right? It's not like a real thing. It's not like we eat matzahs for this or more or for that, or lean on Pesach for whatever reason we do. This seems to be just, what is that? To get the children to ask. So I suddenly hopped. I could turn this around on its head and make an unbelievable idea. And I said to my children, just before the Seder, okay, this year we're doing something different. They were already at the age, none of you, or any of you, I'm sure, have a Seder like this, where people just, once in a while don't always pay attention, especially when I'm leading the Seder. Someone else is saying something, they listen. But when I'm leading the Seder, they're not leading, and that's the main mitzvah for me, is to talk to them and get them to listen. Right? But I see from all the smiles on your face, it hasn't happened to any of you. But in any case, the point is, how do you possibly get people to listen no matter what? And pretty much anyone who got my invitation said, I'm guaranteeing that. Now, I just want to make sure you understand what I'm guaranteeing tonight, because it costs me a lot of money otherwise. I'm not guaranteeing that someone won't come up with an answer that I'll eventually suggest. I'm not guaranteeing that. There's no money back guarantee on that. If you thought that, it's a big mistake. Okay, I want to be clear. I got a lot of witnesses. Okay, what I'm saying here is that it's a money back guarantee. There's no cost here to come anyway. It may be Oleg Shul for the kugel. It's a money back guarantee, right, that they will listen if you do this. I got 3 Sedurim under my belt to prove it. And what you should say is, listen, today what I'm doing is I would like you to look for the answer for why we dip twice in the Haggadah. And I will give anyone who answers this question, and I was quite serious about it, they could tell I meant it, $180. I think I said 100, but it's ready for inflation. It's about 10 years. I'll give anybody $180 who gets the answer, but here are the conditions. A, you can't read ahead while you're looking for the answer. You can't read ahead. You have to hear me reading the Haggadah, and when I come to that point where you think the answer is, if you call it out, you get the $180. But if you're looking ahead and you're not paying attention, and it seems like a minute later, doesn't count. So, of course, someone said right away, there's no answer. The boys were old enough for that already. They're Bachram in Tel Yeshiva, mind you. And they said, there's no answer. I said, yes, there is. I had prepared. You see, I have a tradition that if you've got a kasha, and it's a good one, there's an answer. Even when the Gemara says kasha, my Rabbanim told me, there's an answer to the kasha. It just means the Gemara didn't like it as much as other answers. There's an answer. In Torah, there's an answer for everything. And you always have to remember that. And you always have to be ani mamin b'emunah shlema that you can find the answer. And you will. So I said, there's got to be an answer in the Haggadah. Now, one of the Avrechim in the Kol said to me, when I asked him, he said, well, I know the Haggadah pretty well. And that wasn't how he phrased it, but it was probably in Yiddish. I didn't understand what he was saying. And in any case, okay, he said, I know the Haggadah pretty well, he said, and there is no answer. So the only other possibility that you could possibly be suggesting is that you're going to build an answer. I said, good, you're right. I built an answer. But I think it's ganz fine. I really think it's the emes. 100% emes. And therefore, I told my children, I do have an answer. And they kind of looked at me, like this, is Abba being serious or not? And I said, I'm being completely serious. I have an answer to why we dip twice, and it's in the Haggadah. So you can imagine what the Seder was like that year. You could hear a pin drop. Okay, it was quiet. Everyone was following along with their fingers and trying to find the answer right as I read it. And when we finished the Seder, the last Chad Gad Yar, whatever we did, right, someone stood up and said, you didn't tell us the truth. And I said, yes, I did. And they said, well, where is it? I said, well, I'm going to tell you. I said, it was your job to find the answer. They said, well, the Seder's over. We want to know. Prove to us that you said it's true. I said, no problem. You give me $180, and I'll tell you the answer. That's not fair. You didn't tell us that. We didn't talk about what would happen if you didn't find it. I'm thinking about it now. I'd like to make some money. So they said to me, that's not fair. I said, okay, I'll give you another chance. You can have the deal tomorrow. Really? Yes, you can have the deal tomorrow. So we made the deal. They would go for the second Seder. And it worked like a charm then, too. They looked through the whole Haggadah. They were listening to every word I said. And it was all over. They were getting, I don't want to say, let's just say they had a lot of emotion. Okay? I'm trying to speak polite. Rabbi told me to, keep it down a little bit. Right? So they were polite. And but you understand what was going on? Can you guess? 15, 13-year-old boys? Okay. Not to mention my daughters, who also had a daya. And it wasn't there, they said. I said, okay, well, tell us what it is. Well, you all know what I said. You pay me $180. I'll tell you. We'll look next year. That's ridiculous. We're not waiting a whole year. I said, that's okay. You don't have to. You can pay me $180. You're going to have it now. You can wait until next year. Well, I got away with it for the third Seder. And at that point, my life was in danger. Okay? I decided that if I didn't tell them, that was it. Okay? So I told them, and what could they do? They said, it sounds like a good answer. So I got it by my biggest critics, you understand? I mean, you have Talmid Hachamim here in the room, but you get it by your teenage children. You know it's a good answer, okay? All right, that's for sure, okay? So in any case, let's see if we can build the answer. There are basically three parts. The first two parts are preparing for the answer, just to see the pattern, and the third part is to actually see the answer. So you understand what three parts, okay? The first two parts will let you know what they are in advance, and the third part, when it comes, it comes. I didn't say, if you want to pick more than $180, you can. Don't pick a number that they'll know based on your budget that you're lying and there's no answer. Then it won't work. They won't want to look. And don't pick a number that's too small that they won't be excited to win. And ideally, if you can pick a number that even the adults in the room are excited. So I felt like $180 or $100 in my house did the trick, and it did. And the kids and the adults were all listening. It was just the right number. Don't pick 1,000, and don't pick 18. And by the way, if anyone gets it, you should have nachas. Right? Instead of saying, I lost $180. That's the greatest nachas of all. They were mechadim to you. Besides, once it's already in the world, you know the story about Rav Chaim Volozhin and the Gaon. Once it's already in the world, it's a little easier to get. Okay? And now it's already 3 Sidurim that we've done it, and 50 to 60 of my Talmidim, and probably 2 minutes Talmidim have probably heard it also. Okay, well, the two parts of what we're going to talk about. One is the karpas, okay, and one is the child who doesn't know how to ask. Those are the starting points. Right, when I think of the karpas, I think of a little boy who was 2 at Pesach time the year before. He doesn't remember Pesach at all when it comes around, unless he's an exceptional genius. Okay? And if it comes around the next year, so by that time, the erech, don't count the weeks and tell me I have it off by 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. Right? About 50 some odd weeks, he's depending leap year, not leap year, right? About 50 some odd weeks, he's made kiddush, washed his hands, and made a motzi. Okay? Plus 12 6 Yom Tovim that have 2 meals in them. So we're getting close, especially in the leap year, we're getting close towards 70 times since last Pesach. He's seen kiddush, wash your hands, a motzi. So you make kiddush, he knows what's going, he runs to the sink, washes his hands, comes back to the table, and you look at him and you say, how would you like a piece of parsley? Doesn't that sound exciting? And he's a 3-year-old boy. Well, let me tell you, one of my boys broke out crying. And I'm smiling. This is the best thing in the world. He's crying. This is great. And my family says, you're so mean. Right? I said, no, don't you understand? That means he understands. Right? Thank you very much. That means he understands. He understands that it's not supposed to be vegetables. So I was thrilled. So I looked at him and I said, are you crying because you want motzi? He nods his head and I said, okay, well, let me tell you, we're not having motzi tonight. Started crying more. I said, tonight's a special night. And I figured, what's the best way to say it to a 3-year-old? He's been to nursery school already. He knows what a birthday party is. I said, today is the birthday of the entire big family we're part of called the Jewish people. And we're going to do lots of fun and special things. And you know what? After that, it was about bedtime for him. He was done. He didn't need any more. That was exactly for him. In fact, that's why the sages made karpas. For the little kid who just has enough knowledge to recognize what's going on. He doesn't need any help. He might even ask why a motzi, like some of my other kids did. But at least he could cry his question through tears. What's going on? Right? That's the karpas. That's its point. It's basically, in the language in English of one of my rebbeim from many years ago, is there to make the child ask. That's what its purpose is, to get him to ask. Right? Which is, to have a hekera, to have a recognize that something's different, to make the children ask, exactly like Chazal say in the Sforim, not in the Haggadah. And then we have, after that, we have the child who does not know how to ask. Remember now, there are a lot of translations, including in our Welt, in English, that are out there, that talk about the child who's unable to ask. That's not the translation. It says he does not know how to ask, which means this is a child who's worse than the 3-year-old who can recognize it's supposed to be a motzi. He does not know how to ask. He could be a genius, by the way. He could have, be 40 years old, gone to let's make him 22-year-olds in 1980, and gone to a fine college, and he thinks karpas is normal. Because he only makes kiddush once a year. I don't think you people know people like that. That's who I work with all the time. The people who think karpas is normal. Because that's the only time they make kiddush. Nebuch. It's very sad. But at least they do that. In any case, right, the point is, the child who doesn't know how to ask, what are you supposed to do with him? So the idea is, at patach lo. Now, there are different ways to translate this that I think are legitimate. One means you open up for him, meaning you start the story for him. He won't ask, just talk. Do what you need to do. But the translation that I like is the one from my Rebbe, the same one I'm quoting most of the time here, although a lot of this that we're sharing with you today is from the Malbim, in case you want to look it up, but not all of it. A lot is from the Malbim, plenty is from my Rebbe, and here and there someone else got mixed in with a different name. But in any case, the idea is that at patach lo could be translated, you open him up, not open this discussion for him, open him up, or loosely, I wouldn't say it's translated, but explained as make him ask, which then fits beautifully, right? If he doesn't know how to ask, make him ask, right? That's what you need to do. Okay, just a quick side. We don't really need this for this year. If everybody knows, just raise your hands and I'll stop it. Maybe a few people would like to hear it, so be patient for them. But one of the interesting things about this sentence is that the you is feminine, and the patach is masculine. It doesn't really go together. And there are times like this where the things happen like this in the Torah, and all the commentaries, talk about what it means when you have a feminine with a masculine, or just a feminine when it should be a masculine. There's always a meaning here or there. And so I heard like this, and that is that you need a very unique combination when you want to lead the Seder. You need basically the realization that what you're giving over is what we could call the theory of Judaism, the basic grounding theology, or however you want to phrase it. That's a very male role, the theoretical. But making sure that they are interested, that's like a female role, that's practical. And you see it in the avos and the imahos. Right? They're looking quickly through this, because it's not absolutely necessary for the shir, as I said. But the idea really is that when you're dealing with the patriarchs, there's 3 of them, and they always were interested, or at least in classic examples, in what was theoretically right. Avram wanted peace between Yishmael and Yitzchak, and he thought it could work. And Yitzchak wanted peace between Yaakov and Esav, and he thought that could work. And Yaakov wanted to marry his one true love, and he thought that could work. But Sarah said, "Oh no, nothing doing. Ishmael's going to kill Yitzchak." And Rivka said, "Oh, nothing doing. Esav's going to kill Yaakov." And "Oh, nothing doing." I'm oversimplifying. And "Oh, nothing doing." Rachel and Leah say, "You're marrying both of us." And the Kodesh Baruch Hu told Avram Avinu, right? Listen to Sarah and listen to Sarah and everything she tells you. And Yitzchak, Rivka, basically, she saw or heard, I guess, that eventually that Yaakov got Esav's bracha, so to speak, from the Rebbeinu Shalom himself. That's pretty good proof that was right. And well, Leah had more than half the children, and at least the listed ones. And so it seems to be saying that was a good decision too, because that's hashgacha, that's min hashamayim, right? And that's not an accident if it works out that way. So we see, therefore, that the avos, the patriarchs, right, they were interested in what theoretically made sense, and the matriarchs were saying practically what was going to work. And so at patach lo means, yeah, sure, you have to get along the theory of Judaism, but you got to make it practical. What makes it practical? Well, get them asking, get them involved, right? Do a karpas for a little kid. The question is, what do you do for a little kid? Excuse me, I misspoke. What do you do for a big kid? How do you get them involved? Now, I can't recommend what I'm about to do for everybody. I will say that I'm not going to do it the way I did it at my Seder, but I'll describe what I did. Okay? So you can know what I did. Ask the following question to yourself. What in the world is the pasuk that he got it to the bincha b'yom ahu leimor b'avur zeh on account of this? Kodesh Baruch Hu acted for me when he took me out when I left Egypt. What in the world, if it means make you ask questions? If you're just focusing on tell the story, then it just is v'hagadata, they tell the story and you're done. But if you're going with this other view that the idea about pasuk lo means open him up, get him to ask questions. So what do you need that pasuk for? What is the meaning of that verse? You should tell that story on that day. On account of this, God acted for me. You'll forgive me. I don't remember who it was. I saw it in print for sure. If you want, I'll find it. It might have been like the Amid Dover on the Haggadah. So for some reason, in the back of my mind, that's the print that I'm seeing when I close my eyes. But I'm not sure. But if anyone wants, I promise I'll find it. But trust me. So he says the following, whoever it is. He says that when you read that pasuk, there are two ways to look at it. One is you're talking to the generation that left. No big deal. But not everybody agrees to that. Some say that's our commandment. Meaning you have to say at the Seder, simply, I left Egypt. To your children. When? Right then, when you're doing the child who doesn't know how to ask. So what I did basically was the following. I kind of lowered my voice and I leaned forward. And I looked a little to the left and a little to the right, and I got like a shifty look in my eyes. I mean, I do that well, natural, actually. And I got like a shifty look in my eyes, and I started looking around the room, and I said, I got to tell you all something, and I lowered my voice even more, and I said, you come close, I got to share a secret, and I just want you to know something. I had a dream last night, and I said, in my dream, I'm going to now stop the acting, in my dream, I left Egypt. And I saw Moses, I saw Moshe, I saw Aaron. Forgive me if I slip into English once in a while, that's what I do for a living. I saw Moshe, I saw Aaron, I saw the Dam, I saw the Tzfardea, I saw the Kiddim. And I went through all the plagues, listening to them. And as I'm saying them, I'm getting more and more excited, but not just excited, like I'm putting on like a crazed attitude in my voice, like I'm like crazy of what I saw. Finally, I said to him, and I'm telling you, it wasn't a prophecy. I don't believe I had prophecy. That's not what it was. I was there, I said. I saw it. I can remember it. I don't know why. I don't know how. I said, I dreamed things that when I woke up in the morning, I ran to my Sfarim. I pulled out Midrashim that I've never read before. And the ideas were there, black and white, that I dreamed about. I started shaking like this. I said, I'm telling you, there's no way that could happen by accident. I must have been there. Of course, we had guests at the table, and you can't imagine what was going on at this point, okay? And my children were saying things like, stop it, Abba, Abba, stop it, please, Abba, and don't, Abba, please, they're guests. And finally, one of the children said, why are you doing this to us? And I said, totally relaxed. I kind of went like this. I said, I'm so glad you asked. And all the sanity and calmness returned to my voice. I said, I'm so glad you asked. I said, because I don't know if you're going to believe me, but I was there. I'm not quite sure how to explain it. I don't know if it was my neshama, depends who you ask, whether it's because of Jewish history and the way it's been passed down accurately. But one thing's for sure, I believe it 110% like I was there. And I wanted you to know that, because that's how I feel. This is facts. This is history. You understand? This is no different, forgive me for making a comparison, than the Holocaust. It's a simple fact of history. You can't debate it. I don't know if you know, there was a court case in England where someone sued over this issue about what happened in the Milchama, and the bad guys lost. And the judge said, you can't debate history. Well, there's no difference between this and Sinai. There really isn't, if you think about it. It happened in public. Everybody saw it. Oh, this is a little closer. Okay, so what will be in 150 or 200 years? It's the same thing. It's history. It's not a game. Okay, so now comes the fun part. Right? And the fun part, of course, is not the fun. The fun part is, where's the answer? Because if you don't have the answer, they're going to make your life very difficult. Whether it takes 1 year, because you can't hold out as long as I did, 2 years, 3 years, or maybe you're better than me. You can hold out 4 or 5 years, because hey, right? As long as they believe that you really have the answer, right? And if you want, send them to me. I'll say, yeah, he's got the answer. Okay? The answer is like this. Ask yourselves, where should the answer be? That was what I did. Where would you expect it to be? Because if you can find something that looks right where you expect the answer to be, that's a pretty good proof right there, even before you started studying the material. Where would you expect the answer to be? Well, let's think. Why we dip is one of the 4 questions. Where's the answer to why we eat matzah? Where's that? This you will know. Where's the answer to why we eat matzah? Young man. Where in the Haggadah is the answer to why we eat matzah? Where is it? Yeah, that's right. Very good. Right, by Rabban Gamliel. When he says matzah zu. And where's the answer? We have another boy in the room. Where's the answer to you? Yeah, my friend from the back of the shul. Right? Where's the answer to why we eat maror? What? Rabbi Rabban Gamliel. Okay, now this is a little more expertise. Maybe a Telsbacher. Where's the answer to why we lean? A little trickier. So, the Telsbacher want to help us out? What? No. The answer to why we lean is really Pesach, right? Because remember, we don't make a Korban Pesach anymore, so we don't eat roasted meat. We can't ask that shaila from the Mishnah anymore, right? So, but you did have to lean when you ate the Korban Pesach, right? And so we still lean when we eat the matzah and drink the wine. So when we ask about the leaning, which is really happening for the matzah and the wine, we're being maranas to why do we eat the Korban Pesach. So the Korban Pesach is the answer to why we lean. Okay. So, didn't bring my Haggadah. Hold on. Therefore, that's okay, I don't need it. Therefore, where would we expect the dipping answer to be? All 3 of those were where? By Rabban Gamliel. So where should the dipping answer be? By Rabban Gamliel, right? Well, there's Rabban Gamliel himself, and there's Pesach, then there's Matzah, then there's Morah. Anyone know about what the next paragraph is? No? That's the one after. Very good guess. In every generation, we're obligated to see ourselves as if we went out of Egypt. Well, how personally went out of Egypt? I left the word out. How are we possibly going to feel we personally left Egypt unless we're interested in caring about the story? Unless there's a karpas, unless there's a son who doesn't know how to ask, unless we're treating ourselves as children who don't know how to ask, making sure we ask, making sure our children ask, you think they're going to feel like they personally left Egypt? At least you can get them to say, how do we know it's true? There's so many important questions to be asked over here. You got to make the story practical. Practical means that when it's over, they believe it as much as you, which is what the verse, the Haggadah says over there. In every generation, you're obligated to believe that you personally left Egypt. It's not talking just to the father. It's talking to everybody. Okay. That sounds like, so it's near the other 3 answers. That sounds like it fits with the carpus and the son who doesn't know how to ask. Is there any textual proof from a pasuk? This is the part that I said, okay, I got it. What's the pasuk that proves your personal obligation to believe that you left Egypt? Anybody remember where that pasuk just happened to have come up recently in our shir? Where did that pasuk come up? By the son who doesn't know how to ask. Because it's one and the same. And the one who doesn't know how to ask is the same as the karpas. So why we dip is to ask questions. And you make them ask by saying you really believe it to the point that you're crazy, so to speak. It makes them think you're crazy. And then they'll believe the story so well that they'll also feel they left Egypt. That's the goal. I believe, you could take it or leave it, that beyond a shadow of a doubt, that is the answer to why we dip twice. I have no fakers. You can argue with me. It's your privilege. But I'm absolutely positive that is the answer. We dip twice so you will personally feel you left Egypt. It's in the right place. It fits contextually in terms of the message. And it's got a pasuk to back it up. It's one and the same thing. And then whoever said, lefikach, then you will feel, therefore, personally obligated to thank God with 9 types of thanks, because it personally happened to you.